Welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're going to be pulling my engine out to fix a problem that I thought I had already fixed by being a cheap person. Yeah, so long story short, I had some clutch chatter. So I ended up pulling the clutch. The pilot bushing was loose. The Corvair pilot bushing was a little bit too big for the Volkswagen input shaft. And so I thought I would just manufacture my own to have the Corvair crank dimension and the Volkswagen input shaft dimension. I think my tolerances were too tight. Pressing the bushing into the Corvair crank and then putting it on the Volkswagen, it just messed up. So it ended up fusing the two together or having an interference fit. And so when you put it in, push the clutch in, the clutch never disengaged. It was just riding through the crank through the input shaft. And so you couldn't go anywhere. You had no gears. Because I didn't do it right the first time, I'm going to pull it back apart and show you what I think will fix the problem, and we'll go from there. So first thing we're going to, as you can tell, I'm shooting this the day after I fixed it, so spoiler. First thing we're going to pull everything off, pull the bumper, pull this off, get the engine out, and then I'll show you what happens in the pressure plate clutch side of things. Do what I think is going to fix the problem, put it all back together, and then see if we can't get that going. So let's do it. Okay, now that we got this out, I'll pull my pressure plate, clutch apart, and then get the get access to the pilot bushing. Now on the Volkswagen engine, there's only these 4 bolts hold the whole thing in the engine, so, or in the car. Simple design, you unhook your gas, fuel, and wires, and 4 bolts. The whole thing comes right out. Okay, so it doesn't look terrible, which is odd. I was expecting to see like vertical lines, which there is a couple shined up in there. No poop. So right here is what actually rides in the bushing. So the clutch will go. This might not be right, but right direction. So the clutch will sit there like that, and it just gets sandwiched. And the flywheel and pressure plate squeeze this, and this is what spins the tires. When you hit the clutch, it releases the grip, and then this thing runs free and just spins. The problem I have is when the pressure plate releases, this part is still digging in. So it's still wanting to spin everything as one unit. Clearance in that should allow this to slip to where when I disengage the clutch, the pressure, resistance of the tires on the ground will allow this thing to slip. And I should be able to put it in gear and let the synchronizers work. What I got, I don't have my telescoping gauges. I have these little scribes, or dividers. And I believe this will transcribe my measurement for me. .586, 587. And this is at 585, 585. So right now I got 2 thou, which probably, if this thing's just barely misaligned for some reason, it will. So I'm just gonna hone it. So what I normally do, which is probably not the right way of doing things, I'll get whatever the thickest rod I can find is, and take, in this case it's my welding wire. I got some 1/8 inch aluminum. I'll cut about 8 inches off. And then I'll take this about, really it's whatever I'm honing. So in this case, this 2.5 inches will be fine. I'll take it, bend it over on itself, squish it down. If you have a vise, it helps. Just kind of something smaller than what you're dealing with. Or if I would have grabbed a hammer, that works. Yeah, so you're just kind of pinching it over on itself like this. And then it's just still way too long, so I can cut it some more. Now, I'll explain a little bit better. And then I'll take some paper. This is just some 320 grit. It's just 320 grit. I'll open this up. Slide it up in there. And fold it in myself. And then the grit will kind of keep it from falling out. About like that. I just kind of start it and fold it in. And if it's too big to get on the hole, so then you're just going to twist it around like that. And so I'm going to put it in my drill. Won't take much. It'll take all the rough edges off. You're just kind of smoothing it off in there. And the best part is if you feel like all that's all black, just rip it away and you get your fresh little patch. You kind of twist it up like that, put it back in the hole. Okay. So I'm probably gonna call that good. So all I did was I measured the input shaft on the transmission. They measured at 585. So I set this up at 585, locked it in place, put T gauges, locked this 585, put my T gauges in there, and then I just kind of set them to where they just barely bypass. So it just barely touches both sides. Then I'm putting this in here and just kind of putting it all kinds of different spots, seeing if there's any resistance, as straight as I can. Before, you could feel every little line of the lathe, boring it all out, or like any kind of ridge. It was it wasn't rough, but you could feel everything. Now, it's just real smooth in, real smooth out. The best thing to do would be to have an expandable reamer. You can just dial it in, ream it, and then you're good to go. This is just kind of a last minute effort. So the measurements, I'm not too afraid to be a thou or two off. Probably someone out there will be like, oh, it's gonna chatter and stuff. But the Corvair bushing was already 5 or 6 thou larger than the input shaft on the Volkswagen, and I ran that for years and years and never had a problem. So being that this is only, say the tolerance could probably be a thou, this is probably 2 thou out and it'll be fine. It's a whole lot better than the 5 or 6 that the original measurements are. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think that will clear and allow me to actually disengage the clutch. So now I get to put everything back together and try to install this thing. So what you're gonna need to align your clutch is this tool. You just slide it in there and that'll hold it steady with your clutch. There you go. Then you can kind of, it'll give you a little bit of wiggle room. Not a whole lot though. So, then you can slide this over. And then normally, on this it will have a mark on flywheel, or not flywheel side, which I know this side is the right, because if you were to flip it around, probably just not gonna go. Yeah, it doesn't actually fully seat. You want this material all the way up on this surface. So, putting the hardware back in. Now you're going to want to torque this to 22 foot-pounds. And normally I'll just kind of go slowly up. Right there. Now, if you go to torque it, it's going to want to twist all this and you're going to lose. So what I do, let me bring it down. What I'll end up doing is getting a screwdriver, like a pry bar, put the pry bar on the tooth, and then that will allow you to put some torque on it. So now, I can torque it without worrying about this thing spinning. That's torqued on. Move this out, make sure it goes in there nice and easy. Okay, so we're on day 2 of this project. Yesterday we pulled it out. That went well. We ringed the bushing, re-put the clutch and pressure plate back on. Went to put it back in, and then that's when we ran into trouble. Yeah, spent probably about 3.5 hours trying to stab this motor, taking the pressure plate back out, relining the clutch, putting it, tried every just different which way. Couldn't really hold my tongue right, and well, she never went. So ended up calling it a night, went inside, slept. Went in town this morning, came back, had a few minutes, and I was like, well, I'll just try it. So I picked it up first try, popped right in there. So sometimes you just get lucky. Obviously, the camera died last night, and I didn't really have the camera on when I was doing it, so the motor's here. So I will probably just be putting everything else back on and going from there. Now that the motor's stabbed, we can actually check to make sure it actually worked, instead of just putting everything together and then starting it up later. So that's neutral. Rolls pretty good. It's in gear. Got resistance. Push the clutch in. This is when it wasn't working earlier. Push it. And we got some slippage. So that worked. Push this back forward. All as well. So now that we know that works, we can put this back together. Maybe not start it tonight, but start it in the morning or tomorrow once I get home. So let's get to it. I'm gonna run all my wires back. So after editing this video this morning, I've decided to divide this into a two-part video, doing the driving, the startup, and doing the next couple of tidy up things like the battery needs to be charged, things like that. I'm gonna make that a separate video. Thanks for watching. If you would, please like and subscribe, and I'll be posting some more video content on this thing in the future. I'm gonna start making the next video now, so we'll see. I'll see you then. Thank you.